Thank you, Mrs. Stacey. Members, have you any questions for the officer?
Yes, Chairman. Is it possible we've got the map on which Mrs. Stacey has highlighted the roads, I think, where the people Rivers Close, Tremonton Drive, and North Fulham Cottages. Is it possible to be any more specific with regard to where the houses are, or are we not really supposed to be specific?
Yeah, you have the exact address on the copy of the representations that you have, but obviously for the purposes of the website, we don't put people's personal exact addresses on there, so that's why it's been a bit vague on the map. Okay, if you have a look.
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this point? No. Okay, all right, thank you. In which case we shall move on to speakers. The first speaker that we have is, I believe, the applicant from the rugby club, which is Mr. Belcher. So, Mr. Belcher, you have 10 minutes, sir. There'll be a little reminder from Mrs. Young, who's on the call, about a minute left, and then yes. So go ahead, please, sir.
I don't think I'll be 10 minutes, but anyway, we'll go ahead. Most of the stuff that relates to the license is on the license application, but I will go through. I'll just explain the situation. We're a members club, and the family club as well. We have under 7s, under 18s, 3 senior teams, a ladies team and a girls team. And we also have Erne Valley Harriers as part of our club, part of our membership. As was pointed out, we are private, or were primarily a members club, and but we like to open up the opportunity to use our club to members of the public. We're completely amateur. The only people paid in our organisation are the bar staff and the cleaners and the coaches for the senior teams, including the ladies. Everybody else is a layperson in terms of that. And all the money we generate to the income from the members, from the sponsorship, and also through the bar is channeled back into sports in the local area, primarily rugby. We also, during the COVID shutdown, we were able to have the ladies netball team on site because they had nowhere to go. So we said, help yourself, use our areas if you can. We were quite poorly affected by the COVID, but fortunately we did have a grant from the council, and our membership and our sponsorship people paid up as well. So we're fairly solvent, but it made us think about using our facilities in a more constructive way, more commercial way. And that's whereby we come to a premises license, because there will be houses around our sites fairly soon, as pointed out by Dr. Mania. There'll be houses all around the area. And so the opportunity for us to have additional social memberships into the club. So to invite them in, we'd have have them in as public members. To explain the hours, in order to have additional use of the building, we talked about using it during the day for funerals or wedding parties, or perhaps other areas we're not quite sure. We don't intend to do that only for a hire. So it looks like we're going to be open from 10 in the morning until 12 at night, which we're not. So during the week, we won't be open unless we have a hire during the day. So that part of it is not clearly understood where the license works. So I have to put in the times I would like to sell alcohol, even if I'm not intended to do so, to allow me to hire it out. So that's to clarify that one. And as was pointed out, we already have the license to do most of the things that's on the license. In fact, we brought some of them back in time. We're aware we're going to be close to a development, and in fact, the people that are complaining now are close enough, I think, in terms of that. And noise is a major issue, I think. We're not denying that, because noise carries in a nice, quiet, sunny day, sunny evening, noise will carry. So that is a problem, and we have to control it. But we've had that opportunity, and we've been doing that for quite a while. And I think Dr. Manion's lived here since 2014, and I suggest that we haven't had many problems in that time, I would suggest. And as an example, how we deal with problems, we did have an issue with somebody in Torclose when we ran at the Lions event, and they contacted the environmental health officer for noise. We went back to the Lions people. They had a music till about 11 in the evening, I think 11, half past 11. And we talked to the Lions people, said it's not, we had upset our neighbours, and they brought the timings back on the Lions event, so that closes at 10:30 now. So we adjusted it based on a complaint, and we like to work with the community in order so we can work together. So the noise problem we'd have to control ourselves. Majority of the events will be inside, and especially in the winter, nobody's going to sit out in the patio in the cold. But we do understand that noise does carry. So we're not saying it's not a problem. We just have to deal with it, really, as I say. Can they ask questions of me? I'd ask. Allowed to ask questions?
Once you finish speaking, Mr. Belcher, members of the committee can ask questions of you,
but
right, members of it can't, afraid. So, but they each have the chance to speak, in due course. Okay, so in truth, we're not varying the way we operate very much, and not intended to. But that's not to say that won't be the same in the future. I can't tell you that, because that would be an untruth, I think. So that's all I would say, and that's all I need to say. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions for Mr. Belcher? Yes,
I do. Two questions. Firstly, a caretaker. When it is let out to a different party, how close have you got a caretaker or somebody that will be keeping an eye or listening to what's going on?
If the bar is open, then there is somebody there all the time, obviously. Though some of the day lets we have, for other things other than where the bar's open, hire to other people. We hire to NHS, we hire to other groups. The music group, Irish music group, we leave them to their own devices. We open the building and leave them to it, but they're normally in the building, so not outside.
So as a club, you would be hoping to run the bar for some of these outsiders that use the premises, is that right? Yes,
if somebody came along to a funeral, then we had the opportunity to open the bar, put on food or that sort of thing. That's what it's for during the day.
And secondly, how strongly are you going to advertise this extra events that you're prepared? How are you going to advertise it, or aren't you? Or are you just going to do word by mouth? How's it?
Well, we will advertise it. It's open, I would say. It'd be silly not to, because the idea is to try and encourage other people to come in, support the structure of the club. So we would advertise events, yes, but on social media, on our social media, not on other people's social media.
No, but how strongly are you going to advertise that the premises is there to be hired for outside bodies to use?
Well, it is at the moment for non-licensed, activities. As I say, it's on our website, but it's not that clear, I suppose. That's what I'd say, but that's the only place we'd advertise it, on our website or on a Facebook site. That's yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Lovely. Councillor Smurden, any questions from yourself?
Yes, once again, a couple of questions. With regard to, the major change which is going to happen is that your hope, that you're applying for is that you'll be able to serve alcohol to pretty much currently you can only do it to members and I guess members' guests and etc. Yeah, but the major change will be that you will be able to sell it effectively to anybody. So for a start, when you, I know Ivybridge is quite a strong rugby club, and you have you obviously have matches with visiting teams, and you've got crowds, etc. like that. Currently I would imagine it's managed on a member basis and a reciprocal basis when you've got other members from other teams coming, but should your license change, then effectively you're going you're going to be having anybody who can come in to watch, and anybody can come in to drink as well. Have you got any concerns around that, or is that going to be policed properly?
No, I mean, the police have made no objections, and I think, as I say, I'm not privy to the information. There was nothing raised, I think, from the authorities vis-a-vis that problem. We don't envisage having lots of numbers coming in, and we'd still be a members club. And what we do is, if you are a non-member, you will be charged more for your beer than you are for a member. So the idea of social membership is that you get the reduced price. So we have a differentiation in price to encourage people to be social members. So in theory, it might be that most people are still members. But on a match day, for instance, lots of people are coming up. You can serve them on a match day. Okay.
And then on the issue of noise, and the issue of noise at events, etc. I mean, I'm here where I live, we've got quite a large village hall, which was built sort of 25 years ago, and is pretty popular. And we have a considerable amount of, like everybody else prior to lockdown, that we did have, event. Now, so I'm aware of, we've had noise issues. I mean, for example, we didn't realise, but, there are two large extractor fans at one end, and when the fans are running, they also extract the noise. And also, I mean, during the summer, the temptation is, that it's a totally natural temptation. Everybody, people throw the doors and windows wide open, and that's when the noise gets out. I mean, as my colleague Councillor Reeve has said, if you've got an event, that's happening with live music or something during the summer, who's going to be policing the events to make sure that everything isn't just thrown wide open and the sound is escaping everywhere?
Yes, I mean, it's much easier in the winter because all the doors are locked up, the curtains are drawn, and so on and so forth. But in the summer, it's obviously more of an issue. I agree. But we have staff on site all the time, that could deal with that if that became a problem. And I suppose the easiest way to do it is you should be able to contact somebody within the club. Should you have a problem.
Yeah, well, the trouble is when it's sort of 11, 12 o'clock at night or whatever, and things are, you've got a big crowd there, and bands if you've got a good event going and everybody's dancing, etc., the last thing a band will want to do is turn the sound down. I know that because I've been there.
Well, we have control of the sound system anyway. We have control of the sound.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Smurden?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Belcher. Much appreciated. Next, we'll go to Dr. Manya. You have 10 minutes, as Mr. Belcher did, to make your representation, and then the committee will ask any questions of you at the end. So please do go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Marvellous. Okay, so thanks to Mr. Belcher, because you are our neighbour in all of this, for giving your representation. I do appreciate having your view and explanation of the daytime events that you might hire the place out for. So that's really helpful to understand a little bit more behind your application. I will, if you don't mind, just go through the objections that I made, just so that you can hear them from our point of view. But before I do that, I want to state that I also support the work of the club in terms of its sports work that it does for children of all ages. I think I'm absolutely a proponent of that, and love to see them out playing and being coached and doing a really, really good job. And also the work that you do with adult teams. So I support the club absolutely in that aspect as a near neighbour. Just before I begin going through the points that I wish to make, Daniel, if you don't mind me saying, the list of specific dates that Naomi read out for us in her report was not given in the documentation that I originally saw. So that makes it a little bit hard for us because we haven't seen all of those dates, which obviously add to major events that perhaps are a little bit more noisy than some of the day-to-day stuff. So it would have been useful for that to be made much more obvious to us. So I'll just go through in terms of the objection points that you allow. So prevention of crime and disorder. You'll be aware that the rugby club is very close to an unmanned railway station and also a car park that has no CCTV. We already have young people who gather there in cars and create a bit of a nuisance and sometimes leave some debris behind. My concern is, I guess, a little bit for their own welfare, but also danger on the tracks. It's an unmanned station. It doesn't have CCTV. And if you are selling alcohol to be taken away, which is new to this particular licence, I have a fear that that will be younger generation people who may be of age to buy it, but then may take it over the road, literally, to this car park with no CCTV and cause crime and disorder and possibly impacting on the railway line. So again, as a club, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do anything about that because all you're seeing, as you say, is what the bar staff see inside the club. So I would be asking a question about policing for that matter. And I suppose that also comes under point number 2, which is public safety. Under the public safety point, I also raised the issue that if you are going to be advertising, as you said you had, more of the events that are going on and the fact that the licence is more open for alcohol sale, that will increase traffic to the rugby club, both vehicular traffic and also foot traffic. You'll probably be aware that the Fulham cottages, I can't speak for the other estates on the other side of the rugby club, we were built 200 years ago, and our properties are not secure in the way that some of the more modern properties are. So fencing, hedging, all of that kind of thing simply wasn't in place when our properties were built. And we do know, research will tell you that where there's alcohol intake, there is often changes in behaviours and trespass of local properties. So in terms of our own safety, I feel a little bit uncomfortable by that. I have met people in the lanes in the dark because I'm a runner, so I tend to run at all times of day, and it's sometimes being a little bit unsettling. Then also prevention of public nuisance was another one. Again, it's sort of all related to the alcohol, really, and I have a question for Naomi, Daniel, if it's allowed later at some point, actually, because I don't know the legislation and the law, which is about decibel limit in the Live Music Act. If the Live Music Act deals with decibel levels so that we couldn't hear it, even if the doors are thrown open, then that's fine, because we wouldn't be able to hear the noise. If it doesn't deal with that, then that is something that I would like reviewed, as Naomi said, if the licence is granted, and put in as a condition of that. Basically, because the licence now is for so long that 24 out of 48 hours of our weekend could potentially, and I don't think it would happen all the time, but potentially could be really noisy. For those of us who are working and have very busy working lives, we would kind of like quite peaceful weekends, really, not with music banging out loudly. So if the Live Music Act deals with that, fine. If it doesn't, then it's something we need to consider. And then the protection of children from harm. I would like to hear from Mr. Belcher a little bit later, if he's allowed to respond, that I love the family atmosphere of the club and the fact that we see tiny tots out there playing rugby. I'm somewhat unsettled, I suppose, by the licence extent, you know, from 10 o'clock in the morning. And I kind of feel, you know, their primary goal at that club is to do some sports training, to provide role models for young children, And I just feel that with alcohol sales extended throughout the day, that gives a different sense of what's going on in the club. And I obviously would like to ask about safeguarding and what's put in place there, particularly when there may be non-members on site buying alcohol who are less bothered about the club's reputation than those who are obviously signed up to the club and looking after their kids there and enjoying a bit of sport. So yes, I kind of believe that the safeguarding issue, which obviously is a legal issue, needs to be addressed, aside from the other points that I've raised about public safety, crime and disorder and public nuisance. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Manya. I shall go to Councillor Reeve, Councillor Smyrn. Have you any questions for Dr. Manya?
No, I haven't, thank you.
No, not really. I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay, that's fine. It's not really part of the process, but I will, in this instance, I actually no, I'm going to take legal advice on this because I want to be sure that I'm sticking to the right process. Technically, Mr. Belcher can't really come back on anything that that Dr. Manya has said, but if Mrs. Foulds could perhaps advise me at this point, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly, as well as Dr. Magna has asked the question, if Mr. Belcher is happy to answer it, and then I certainly think you can proceed. Obviously, because of time constraints, we don't want to get too much in the to and fro, but no. It's
okay. That's fine. Thank you very much, Mrs. Foulds. In which case, Mr. Belcher, if you'd like to respond to Dr. Manya's question, then
yes. Thank you, Dr. Manya. In order to put on rugby for young children, you've got to have a certain process within the RFU, and that includes having a safeguarding officer and some support for that. And all coaches should be covered by the disclosure and barring service, so they're all checked. So we have a large structure within the club that's regularly checked that covers that issue with children. The extension to the hours does not affect how that works, because I think you're aware on a Friday, because you see all the cars on a Friday, that the Mini Juniors train on a Friday and play on a Sunday. And on a Friday, we don't allow any extensions during the season at all. So you won't see any extensions on a Friday. The opportunity is there with the licensing, but we don't do it because that evening is put aside for the children. So there would not be an issue with the extension of license on that or hiring on that time. There will be during the summer, though. The summer's a slightly different situation because they're obviously not there. And so we have a separation by days. It's Friday and Sunday from the other parts of the club, and we have a structure within that looks after child protection, and we have to do that as part of the RFU regulations to be able to provide rugby to young people.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Belcher. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Daniel, if I might just use the last minute of my time just to say that I did actually suggest some mitigating factors when Naomi came back to me in my representation. So if I can just list what they were, that the amplified music must be kept below the decibel range that would carry to the neighbours. The alcohol sales, I would like to see that limited to consumption on site. I think alcohol sales that can be taken off site would cause an issue. I also said a regular police presence, i.e. if there are events going on, that there are a police presence. And I have seen that. So, for example, when you have the fairgrounds up here just once a year, there is a greater police presence, and that's great. We appreciate that locally. That the parking must be on site. I think that's really important because we're getting increased traffic around the lanes. And also that antisocial behaviour obviously would be discouraged by staff at the rugby club, and if it is seen, would be acted upon. So those were the mitigating factors that I made as recommendations in my representation.
Okay, thank you very much, duly noted. Right, thanks for that. Next, we'll go to Mr. Sibley. Mr. Sibley, you, as the previous speakers do, have 10 minutes, sir. So please do go ahead.
Hello, thank you. I've got not much more to say than Pollyanna said. I live in Fulham Cottages. They are hard onto the pavement between Ivy Bridge and Bitterford. There's a new estate of 200 houses being built to the east of us, the Bitterford side, and I would imagine that we will get people passing on foot between the rugby club and that estate late at night, having drunk lots of alcohol. I have real concerns about that, especially if it's going on after midnight. So I would ask that basically that everything should finish at about 11 p.m. I'm just basically reiterating what Pollyanna said, so I'm not going to go through all that again. Noise levels are a problem. When there are functions at the rugby club, the noise is very loud, especially when we've got the wind coming in from the southwest, I should say. Why do they need to be selling alcohol for consumption off the premises? That's a question I wanted to ask of Mr. Belcher. No alcohol is allowed to be consumed in the streets of Ivybridge itself. And I can't see that it would be policed properly up here where we've got rugby pitches opposite us that people sometimes break into, and the station car park. Other than that, I just support everything that Pollyanna said.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sibley. In the same way that I allowed Mr. Belcher to respond to a question by Dr. Manning, I'll allow Mr. Belcher to respond to Mr. Sibley's question if he wishes to do so. Yes, thank you.
The off sales are part of the original license, the existing license we have. We can do it. So, and in truth, I'll tell you now quite candidly, we don't do a lot of off sales because we're expensive compared to Tesco's and everybody else. You know, why would they buy from us when they could buy from Tesco's at half the price probably? It's just for us. It's for members who don't want to go drive down somewhere and go and get something. You want to just get say a bottle of wine and go home. We do hardly any off sales, I think, but that was part of the existing license. That's the honest answer for you. So
okay, all right, thank you, splendid. Any members, have you any questions of Mr. Sibley?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. I don't know whether I'm able. I just like there's a question I would like to ask Mr. Belcher as a point of clarity.
Yeah, you're welcome to. You're welcome to, Councillor Spillane.
With regard to events that happen there, do you have, for example, have a? I'm trying to sort of, in terms of mitigating the effect on on residents. Do you ever have, for example, a rugby game in the afternoon and then a follow-on event in the evening? Does that ever happen? I mean,
yes.
My reason for asking that question is that obviously, with the best intentions that you have, I mean, your club and its activities do have an effect on your neighbours, and in order to mitigate, I mean, everybody has to rub along. Everybody, people live where they live. They can't change things, but you can do things to mitigate the impact on your neighbours. And having, I may be straying off the but you can see the point I'm trying to make. If people can probably put up with they can probably put up with a match in the afternoon and then a peaceful evening. And they can have a peaceful afternoon and maybe a dance in the evening. But if you've got stuff running all day, then I can fully understand why people would get upset about that. Could you respond to that?
Yes, I mean, it's a general practice. We do exactly as you say. We sometimes have a game and follow-on event after that, but those are rare, to be truthful. I think the neighbours will tell us most, but occasionally we have a problem. It's not a general practice, and I don't think that will change. I understand that when you have large numbers as well, there's going to be noise. And noise during the game and during the day, again, that might could affect you as well, even then, when we play the games, because it can be quite noisy during the games, that alone. But that's a short period of time, 80 minutes in this case. This is extra time, of course. So that's not so much of a problem. I understand that if you extend that day, that could be a problem, but it's not a constant, really. We don't, in fact, it's rare for us to do that. Maybe once a month, I think, maybe if that. I mean, you'd be a better judge of that than me, because you hear it.
Okay. All right.
I have one question of Mr. Belcher, and that's, do you have any? Would you like to respond to the suggested condition, or do you have any views on the suggested conditions that have been proposed by Dr. Mania?
Yes, I mean, what we could do is to bring the finish time back up to 12 o'clock. I mean, that was a proposal I thought we could do. So I spoke to people and said, look, 12 o'clock should be the witching hour, really. Everybody should be gone at 12. The extra half hour is added inconvenience to others. So perhaps we adapt it. So we move it back to 12. So you'd finish, in this case, you'd finish serving at 11:30, and the club will be closed at 12 o'clock. You're allowing people to distribute at that time. So that would be a suggested change. The off sales are not a problem, I don't think, in terms of income, but it's convenience for the members. Is that you lose a convenience for the member who wants to take a bottle of wine home, for instance, which is most of the stuff we sell is the odd bottle of wine, to be truthful.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
With the increased usage of the site by various people, the likelihood is that alcohol will be purchased, especially by younger people, and actually consumed around. Yeah. That might not happen now, but it may well happen in the future with the increase. In total, 700 houses are being built all the way around here.
I would just point out, Mr. Sibley, that we in terms of considering the licensing objectives, I'm afraid we can only consider the situation as it is at present. We can't really consider whether or not X number of 100 houses will be built. So that,
well, they are being built now.
No. Okay, but these things, licenses can be reviewed at any point. So that's perhaps a mitigation there. I'd like to.
We would be conducive if in the future it became a problem with the alcohol sales, that we talk to you and then sort of come to some solution. But at the moment, I don't see that as a problem. I do see the last half hour being a problem in terms of time. But if we have a problem in the future, then we knock on the door. We'll have a chat.
Right. Okay. That's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Belcher. Okay, if there's no further questions from either Councillor Reeve or Councillor Smurden,
Chairman,
yes,
do you want me to just come in on the point? I think Dr. Mania had a query for me regarding the Live Music Act.
Yes, please do go ahead. Yep.
No problem. Yes, so just to clarify with regard to Live Music Act, so there isn't a set decibel limit under either the Licensing Act or the Live Music Act, unfortunately. That is very much dependent on the background noise levels. There has to be monitoring done generally for that kind of level to be set. So the way that we would usually recommend that in circumstances where that's appropriate is through a noise management plan, which would have to be developed, and an acoustic consultant or specialist would then measure the noise levels, possibly in nearby properties, and they would set a specific level for that premises based on its location, because it obviously varies quite significantly. So unfortunately, there isn't a set level. And in terms of the Live Music Act, it is an automatic exemption that will just apply if alcohol is granted to be sold on the premises. And any conditions, so if we did put a decibel limit on there, for example, we wouldn't actually be able to enforce that during those hours of the Live Music Act, which is until 11 p.m. It would only apply if music were going to take place until midnight, which is what is applied for on a Friday and Saturday. So when I mentioned the review, what would happen is if there were issues with noise, so if we'd had any noise complaints or there are concerns about the volume of music, then you can review a premises license. That would then be considered by a committee. They could then either put those conditions on for the noise limits or additional conditions, or they could remove music altogether and say, actually, the Live Music Act does not apply to this premises because of the nuisance that they've caused. So that's how that would work. So unfortunately, it's not as simple, unfortunately.
Okay.
Have you got any questions about that? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Thank you for responding to that. And I guess then we would just look to the club to put their own limits on it so that we don't have to go through any horrible and acrimonious process. Most of the time it's great. Only things like the fairground and whatnot go beyond that, but that's once a year. So if we could look to the club to self-monitor, then hopefully we can avoid any of that. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Right. In that case, we will now members will now retire to consider its decision. We might, as I said at the beginning, we may come back in about 45 minutes time if we've been able to make a decision by then. If not, we will of course email. I believe I can check. I can look to Naomi on this one, but I believe it's within something like 5 working days. You'll get the result if
That's right.
That's right. Okay,
you'll get that either way. You'll get that either way. Even if any of you are unable to stay on past, the next 10-15 minutes, we will email the decision to everybody either way within 5 working days.
Thank you. I'm afraid I will have to go on to my next commitment.
I'm aware you have to.
I would just like to thank you all, though, for the relatively civil nature of which this has taken place, because I've done these before where, frankly, it's pitchforks at dawn, and it's very nice to see, even though I realise that there is an element of disagreement here, that it is still very civil. So I just like to say thank you for that. Anyway, I shall stop waffling and we will defer, and we will probably see you again in about 45 minutes time or less, depending on how long it takes. So I'm going to leave, and if Councillor Smurden and Reeve can as well, I'll join you in the next meeting. Thank you.
I've got to go. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Bye. Because we haven't actually arranged another meeting by the looks of things, so we need to do that.
I'll do that now.
Yeah,
Chair.
thank you. Bye.
That makes sense.
Okay. The other members will be joining back in a second.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting.
That's fine. Well, I've just come back up. I timed it just right.
Right then. I shall wait till everybody else is here.
It's nice to hear that we were very polite, because I have attended meetings where it's not quite as polite, and you don't get anywhere, do you?
I have to say, I thought particularly. Actually, Ms. Check, are we still streaming? I think we are, aren't we?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Just before I continue by saying, yes, I have. I thought everything was very civil, which is the main thing. So just to let people know that we are still streaming.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I've got Becky. I think everybody's here.
We are.
Yep. Got there.
Lovely.
Yeah, I'm here.
Right. Lovely. Did Mr. Belcher leave or?
He's still logged in. Do you want me to give him a call in case he's away from his computer?
Yeah, you can.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Do that. I've left him a voicemail. Not sure if he.
Okay. He's still on the call though, isn't he?
Yes, he's still in the meeting.
Not necessarily. It is showing as status unknown, so I'm not too sure whether he is still on the call.
Okay. It went straight to voicemail when I called just now, so I'm not sure.
Oh, and it says the same for Mr. Sibley, so ignore that, please.
Yeah, I'm here.
I think Mr. Sibley's here as well. We'll just give it a minute or two for the applicant to come back. Shall I proceed or shall I wait?
I'm happy to proceed.
Okay, I just want to find out from.
As far as Dem Services is concerned, I think you're able to go ahead, Chair, but
Okay.
Unless the lawyer has anything to add.
I suspect you're right, Ms. Young. Okay, I shall. It would be better worded. Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. I will proceed then. Right. Okay. Right. I shall. The script is available to the. I didn't need to read that bit out, do I? Okay. Thank you for your time this afternoon. We've met and we've reached the following decision, which I shall read out now. We have considered the application for a new premises license We have considered the statement of licensing policy, the government guidance and our objectives that relate to the promotion of the licensing objectives. We have read carefully the written representations from all parties and it is our decision to grant this application subject to the following changes being incorporated into the operating schedule. We have determined the changes to be appropriate in order to achieve the licensing objectives. The first change being no sales of alcohol to be consumed off the premises. The reason we have decided upon this is the concerns regarding people, particularly children, congregating off the premises in the nearby vicinity, thus contributing to the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety and the prevention of public nuisance, the protection of children from harm. The second change we've made is the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises being limited on Friday and Saturday from 10 AM to 11:30 PM. This does not affect the special events listed in the application. The reason for this is the prevention of public nuisance. The council will publish its decision with reasons within 5 working days. I do hope that that makes sense to everybody. With that being the case, I thank everybody for their time. Thank members of the public for coming and making representations. Thank you to the members for coming and thank you to the officers for their work. And I will declare this meeting